All right, gang, we are back on the Frazer Smith Show, presented tonight by the accident attorney, sweetjames.com. If you've been hurt in an accident, call 1-800-9-MILLION. I don't know how I could say that any faster, Mel.
You're getting really good at that.
Yeah. My tongue almost flew out of my mouth there. Joining us right now,
I got spit on me a
the
little
rock
bit.
legend, the great Alice Cooper, and the Supermensch. And there he is,
Shep
Gordon.
Yeah,
Come on, guys. How are you?
Great.
55 years together.
Wow. That is amazing, man.
Someday we'll get around to a contract.
One of these days, right? Well, I still like the story of how how you guys hooked up at the beginning there, because he got into town. You probably met more superstars the first day in L.A. than anybody does in their lifetime, Shep.
Yeah, really, I got lucky.
All right, and then was it Jimi Hendrix who told you to manage Alice?
Yeah, he said, "You Jewish?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "You should be a manager." So I said,
And he happened to know that we were living in the Chambers Brothers' basement. That's how bad. I mean, they were nice enough to let us live in their basement. And so Jimmy knew us, and he knew that we were kind of, fun guys. And he says, "Shep, I know a band that needs a manager." I walk in, I open the door of the Landmark Hotel, and I thought there was a fog machine inside. Air cleared. I look over on the couch, and there's Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin.
Wow.
Everybody sitting there.
Wow, that's an amazing first day for you in L.A., Shep.
Yeah.
Well, you picked a great band, and now you got the old gang back together.
I don't think 50 years without working with each other. I mean, when we parted, we didn't divorce; we just separated. There was no bad blood. Nobody was, there were no lawsuits or anything like that.
Amicable.
Kind of disbanded and stayed in touch with each other. And finally, at one point, they had worked on some of my albums. I said, "Why don't we just do an album?" And got Bob Ezrin involved, and I was absolutely amazed. Everything went so smoothly. We wrote all these songs, and it sounded exactly like 1975.
I noticed that because I listened to Wild Ones and Black Mamba. They're both awesome,
amazing.
And they have that same edge, that same crunch of the
bass
OG band, right?
Right, and losing Glenn was really tough for us because he was our Keith Richards.
Yeah.
We got Robbie Krieger to play on Black Mamba, which was perfect for that song.
Yeah.
And we found a guy named Jazzy in Nashville that just fit in perfectly.
Sound amazing.
Well, it sounded like the old band. I really like both those tunes. And, you have Mike Bruce, Neil Smith on drums, Dennis Dunaway
On bass.
on bass, the old gang.
Yeah.
And do you guys just click right back in as friends, too? I mean, when you
Absolutely.
get together with them?
There was never a beat even. It just felt like this was the album that should have come out after $1 Billion Babies.
Oh, wow.
It had that feel to it.
and they've always played on. Whenever Alice is on tour, if we're in the city where the guys are, they come up on Schools Out and play.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
We did one really cool thing in London. We played the O2, and at the end of the show, the curtain comes down, and when the curtain came back up, it was the old band.
Oh, that's cool.
And so
People didn't know that. Was that a surprise to the audience?
Total surprise to the audience, And the funny thing was the review said, "Oh, Alice Cooper, the show was sparkling. It was right on. It was everything." And then it got dangerous.
Well, that's what that old band was noted for,
That
right?
sounds so like you.
The original bands are more dangerous.
Yeah.
I don't know why. They play darker. I don't know why they do what they do.
Yeah,
And
they absolutely did. Grandy Ballroom, East Town, those were the days, right?
Those were the best days. That Detroit had the healthiest rock scene of anybody, any place on the planet, because every band that came out of Detroit was a hard rock band. I mean, you had the Stooges, the MC5, Alice Cooper, you had Susie Quattro, you had Bob Seger, Ted Nugent. It went on and on and on.
MC5.
Oh,
MC5 was, every single band was a show band and a hard rock band.
Yes, they were. Hey, I want to congratulate you on getting on KLOS.
That was
the radio
very
show.
Yeah, yeah. Doing the radio show for me, I've been doing it now 22 years. And Dick Clark said, if you had a radio show, what would it be? And I said, I would take it back to 1968 FM radio, where the guy could just talk, doesn't have to sound like a DJ. He just talks and plays songs, plays records. And he said, well, let's try it. 22 years later, it's still working.
Wow. And the first time I ever, radio is so important, especially back in the day, to an artist breaking, as Shep knows, and I remember the first time I heard 18, I was driving around, because I'm from the Detroit area like you, and on CKLW.
Yep, Rosalie Trumley.
Rosalie was our hero, because that song, we never thought we'd hear that on the radio, because it was too punk, and radio wasn't playing punk like that. And all of a sudden, we're driving along and we hear it, and we, believe me, we stopped the car.
Yeah. For the first time you hear your first hit on the radio, that must be an amazing feeling.
Yeah, especially since it was, we had nobody calling us saying, hey, you're going to be on CKLW. All of a sudden, we were on CKLW, and that was just like a shock to us.
So you didn't even know that it was going to get played, right? You didn't know that she was going to play it?
No.
In those days, there was a thing called Canadian content rule. And they had to play a certain amount of records that were Canadian content. And because Bob Ezrin was Canadian, and he produced a record, it qualified for Canadian content.
Yeah. And I mean, you're up against, we're just up against Led Zeppelin and the Rolling Stones and the Beatles. You were up against Frank Sinatra. I mean, the top 40.
Radio in those days, right? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, to get into that top 40, you've already got to be established. Yeah. And we were not established at all.
Alice, I want to ask you about the days, the Hollywood vampires, the actual vampires at the Rainbow in Los Angeles. What was it like hanging out with those guys? What was it like hanging out with John Lennon?
Remember?
We kind of got the idea. We always ended up at the same place at the Rainbow every night. And finally, Shotzi, believe it or not, that was the waitress named Shotzi, chewing the gum like this. He says, you guys really are going to get bothered down here. Why don't I put you up here in this loft? And she says, and all I ever see you do is drink, and I only see you at night. You're like a bunch of vampires. And we went, okay.
That's where you got that.
But it was Harry Nilsson and John and Keith Moon and Bernie Taupin and Mickey Dolenz. Yeah. It was a very group.
Wow.
Albert Brooke. I mean, it was a very strange group of people.
Well, and then, when was the Hollywood Bowl concert? Was that at that same time?
Yeah, that was right around that time, yeah.
I think that was maybe the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah. That's where we, it was earlier than that.
Oh, yeah, maybe 75, something
it was
like that,
yeah. And some of the strangest things happened there. Rehearsing during the afternoon, we have Wolfman Jack on a camel.
How do you really beat that? That's pretty.
Better than a camel
takes it home, and it's 100 degrees out. And this guy comes out to clean it up, and the other guy goes, no. He says, that's the wrong union. This is special effects.
It was steaming.
It was steaming and making them.
Well, everything's very specialized with unions.
What I remember most of that was looking down at the audience, dropping panties from a helicopter, and Elton John and Bernie Taupin fighting each other to grab these panties out of the sky.
How are you going to top that for a promotion, really?
Yeah.
You can't really top that. Whose idea was that one?
Got to be.
Between us, it was like, well, maybe we should drop panties on the audience.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, why not?
The album was wrapped in panties.
Yeah, you can't top that.
The goal was the Schools Out tour, so it made sense.
We might have to reenact that, guys. What do you think?
Yeah, really.
The helicopter pilot, I think, lost his license because he came way too down. He came way too low.
Oh man! Now the Hollywood sign. You bought the one of the letters in the Hollywood sign because it was under repair, right?
Yeah, it was the 75th anniversary of Hollywood. Groucho Marks and I were really close friends.
Yeah.
I mean, I would go over there every night and watch TV with him, and he passed away. And I looked up at the sign and it was falling off the hill. And I said, Shep, why don't we buy at the O for Groucho? We went to the Chamber of Commerce and I said, how much is each letter? And they said $27,000. Six stories high, those letters are.
They're big, yeah.
I said, okay, we're going to take the O out of Cooper, so I'll be Alice Copper. And that's the Groucho. And when we did that, we did a press conference of it, and then Hefner bought the H, and then it started the fire, started the ball rolling down the hill.
Man. And being friends with Groucho, that's
with George Burns, all those guys.
all those guys. But both two legends there, of course. But Groucho Marks, how did you meet Groucho Marks?
Jeff was actually took care of his books. He finally said, Groucho, he said, I just want to look at your books for free and make sure nobody's taking advantage of you, right? And Groucho would be in the other room, and he goes, Shep, he says, it's 3:00, sue somebody.
Why not?
The people that always look at me and he goes, that's Shep, my manager, right? And they'd go, yeah, Groucho. He say, turns to me and he says, funny, you don't look like a crook.
Well, what are good managers for? Come on.
Sharp as a tack. The guy was so sharp.
Yeah.
He had insomnia, so he'd call me up at 1 a.m, and I lived just in the next canyon over, and he'd say, Alice, come on over. I can't sleep. So I'd come over. He'd be in bed with his beret and his cigar, and he'd have a chair next to the bed with a 6-pack of Budweiser, and we'd watch television. We'd watch old movies.
Oh, cool.
And the guy would ride up on the white horse like this, and he said, see that guy? I go, yeah. And he goes, gay. He's gay. And I never knew whether to believe him or not.
With Groucho, I guess you wouldn't, right?
Can't, yeah.
Everything's a game.
Yeah. He says, well, Chico and Harpo nailed him.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's hilarious. You got the new album out, Alice Cooper's Revenge, with the old band.
Yeah, the original guys. And, it really was, I forgot, I knew Dennis Dunaway in high school when we ran cross country and track together, before the Beatles.
Yeah,
The Beatles, and he learned how to play bass. I said, we got to be in a band. After I heard the Beatles, I said, we've got to do this. Yeah. And our other guy that was on the cross country team became the drummer. And that was the beginning of the whole thing right there.
So you were high school buddies and you just started a band.
We started a band. So Dennis is my oldest friends. He is my oldest friend. And it started back up when we got together. I forgot how funny the band was. I mean, just their sense of humor.
The lyrics were always hilarious.
Together during the worst times was a sense of humor, And when everybody said, you guys will last a year if you even get a year. And, that was to us defiance, and sense of humor was what really drove Alice Cooper forward.
Yes.
Well, you've always had great, funny lyrics and everything. So the Beatles were obviously a big influence, right?
Yeah, if you just take every single band and take them back to their core, it comes down to Chuck Berry and the Beatles. Chuck Berry was just the absolute author of guitar-driven rock and roll, and he was the greatest lyricist of all time.
Yeah.
If he couldn't think of a word, he'd make one up.
Yeah, he was a great lyricist, yeah.
The cooler
so true.
That is true.
I love that. But he could tell a story in 3 minutes, and he did it every time. Then the Beatles come along, and they were the modern day Everly Brothers, only a lot cooler. Yeah. And I mean, it was everything goes back to the Beatles. All the songwriting does.
Yeah. Well, and you see the response around the world, the huge response, and everybody that had a band probably wanted to try to break out like that if they could, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Now you had a little bit of hard time with the band. Can you tell the Zappa story about when you went to his house?
Yeah, we played the I don't know if you remember the Cheetah Club.
Yes.
That was on
Venice.
Yeah. We were sort of the house band there. And it was Lenny Bruce's birthday party.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
The Doors, the Jefferson Airplane, 3,000 people in the audience, and everybody was groovy, you know. And then we came on, and it was uplighting. And we started out with a song by The Who called "Out in the Street," which is, and it was terrifying. I think we pretty much emptied that building in 3 songs.
Before you knew it, the audience was out in the street.
They were trying to get out of there as fast. We were a bad vibe, you know. And the only people left were there with the GTOs and Vito's dancers. And some of the GTOs went to Zappa, and they said, "We saw this band last night that emptied the building." And,
it's going to catch your attention, right?
Zappa's like, I want to see.
One of the girls said he wants you to play tomorrow at 7. Come over to the log cabin at 7. So we went there at 7 in the morning.
Oh man! Oh wow!
And, we're in full makeup and we're playing, and he comes down. He's got a cup of coffee and a cigarette. And he goes, "What are you doing?" And you said 7 o'clock. Yeah, I'm up. Play. When we played the songs, it was all the songs from Pretty's for You, which were like, there were 5 songs that were like 2 minutes long with 28 changes. I don't get it. And I said, "Well, is that good or bad?" And he goes, "I'm Frank Zappa and I don't get it. Of course I'm going to sign you."
What a great story. Yeah, of course he probably loved it, even though I didn't get it.
Met Shep that night. So the day that we're going to go in and sign the contracts, he said, "Who's this guy?" And I said, "I don't know. We met him last night. He's our manager."
Wow, what a great story. Well, listen, we're excited for the new album. And for you to be back with the band. I know you're also coming out with Judas Priest with your Alice Cooper band in the fall, right?
Yeah, that's great. And the Vampires are on hold right now. Johnny's making a couple of movies, so
very cool.
That's probably next year. Yeah.
Well, man, we're going to get out to the shows and see them. You're always amazing live. Mel, anything else?
Yeah, one of the strangest couplings you did is I Love From the Inside, but David Foster was the producer. How strange was that? Sirius came out of that album, some of the greatest rockers, and David Foster produced it?
Yeah, it was very interesting because I
and you
just
had the Elton John band, right?
I just got out of the hospital and I was sober, and Bernie Taupin was my best friend.
Right.
So Bernie and I started telling him of all the characters in the hospital. And we started writing right then. Lyricists, we're writing the songs right then.
And I started managing David Foster. That was the first thing I did.
Oh, that's how that happened.
Okay.
And that was the first album he produced.
And, it's funny because David Foster, I've heard him say this on many, many occasions. They said, what was the album that you really remember most? He goes, the From the Inside with Alice Cooper.
Wow.
Toto was basically the background band.
Oh,
really? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
There were some great ballads off that. How are you going to see me now? And
yeah.
And
the song, The Quiet Room.
The Quiet Room. Yeah. Oh, amazing.
That
ballads.
was the only duet that Maurice White ever did with anybody.
Oh, from Earth, Wind and Fire.
That's amazing.
Oh, cool.
Can I throw in a quick anecdote? I was on my morning show at KLOS, where I'm back now, and this was, I guess, late 80s. And at the end of the show, the receptionist said, "Hey, there's somebody on the phone that wants to talk to you." I get on the phone, and it was you, and I had no idea. And you were reading off the Detroit Tiger team from 1968 that won the World Series. I just hear you go, Al Kaline, Mickey Lolich, Jim Northrup. I'm going, who the hell is this? But I do remember that.
Proud of our Tigers. Us Detroit guys, we don't have a lot to be proud of, but every once in a while the Tigers and the Lions step up, or the Red Wings, and you got to brag about that.
That's right. You got to stick with the homies.
That's it.
Well, listen, guys, very thankful that you came on the show today. Congratulations on KLOS being here, and also congratulations on the new album with the old band.
Well, thank you very much. And I happen to know Sweet James. Say hi for me.
I will do that. He's everywhere.
We'll talk again.
I'm sure that he's got a billboard even where you guys are now.
Oh yeah, he's a good guy. He's actually a really cool guy.
Yeah, he seems like a cool dude.
carries the
Shep
billboard
Gordon,
with
we
him,
thank
yeah.
you. The Supermensch
Yes,
and
brother,
Alice
thank you for
Cooper. We
asking,
love you
guys.
guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Best of luck with the new album, and we'll see you soon live here in Los Angeles.
Absolutely.
Aloha from Baker's Bay in the Bahamas.
There you go. There they are. Shep Gordon, Alice Cooper, thank you for joining us on the Frazer Smith Show, presented by the accident attorney Sweet James, our buddy.com. If you're hurt in an accident, guys, call 1-800-9-MILLION.
Okay.
He will allegedly get you $9 million. I don't know.
If the guillotine goes wrong, I'll call him.
That could happen. I'm sure it's happened. You always say people get stitches if they're in your band.
Everybody gets their stitches.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Really
All right, man.
appreciate it,
We'll
man.
talk soon.
You guys take care.